I came back from my business trip a week early to surprise them. A brand new BMW was in front of the house. Through the window I saw my wife dancing with her secretary, and my children laughing, as if nothing was missing. No one noticed I was there, but I understood everything. At dawn I changed the locks and cancelled the credit cards. A week later, I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Howard, and at 59 years old I thought I knew what my life was. 23 years of marriage to Sarah, 2 grown children who called me every week, and a consulting business that had given us everything we needed. I was the provider, the steady one, the man who made sure everyone had what they wanted. I was wrong about everything. It was a Thursday morning in October when my world collapsed. I had been in Denver for a week-long conference, the kind of business trip that used to excite me but now felt like an obligation. The presentations dragged on. The networking dinners were filled with the same conversations I'd had 100 times before, and all I wanted was to get home to my family. The flight was delayed, then delayed again. Instead of arriving Friday evening as planned, I found myself driving up our street at 7:30 on Thursday morning, a full week early. I was tired, irritated by the airline's incompetence, but also excited to surprise Sarah and maybe take her out for breakfast before she started her day. That's when I saw it. A brand new BMW 7 Series sat in our driveway, gleaming silver under the morning sun. I slowed my Honda to a crawl, confused. Sarah drove a white Lexus, and neither of our children lived with us anymore. Jennifer was married and lived across town, and David was finishing his graduate degree in Chicago. Whose car was this? I parked on the street instead of pulling into the garage, some instinct telling me to be quiet. The house looked peaceful, normal. The same beige siding, the same red door, the same flower boxes Sarah tended religiously. But that BMW didn't belong. I grabbed my suitcase and walked toward the front door, fishing for my keys. That's when I heard it through the living room window, music playing and something else. Laughter. Multiple voices, all familiar, all happy. I stepped closer to the window, staying in the shadow of the large oak tree we'd planted when David was born. What I saw through the gap in the curtains stopped my heart. Sarah was dancing. At 7:30 in the morning, my wife of 23 years was dancing in our living room with a man I'd never seen before. He was younger than me, maybe 40, with dark hair and an easy smile. He spun her around and she laughed the way she used to laugh with me, back when we were young and everything felt possible. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was sitting on our couch, clapping and laughing, along with the music. Jennifer, my 28-year-old daughter, was there with her coffee mug, grinning like she was watching her favorite movie. And David, our 25-year-old son, who was supposed to be in Chicago, was sitting next to her, actually cheering as this stranger dipped my wife. They all looked so happy, so complete. Like this was perfectly normal, like this was how Thursday mornings were supposed to be in the Harrison household. Like I had never existed at all. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, watching my family enjoy themselves with a man I didn't know. The stranger said something that made Sarah laugh so hard she had to sit down. Jennifer got up to refill everyone's coffee. David was scrolling through his phone, probably choosing the next song. It was a family moment. Warm, comfortable, natural. And I wasn't part of it. My hands started shaking first, then my legs. I dropped my suitcase, and the sound seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet morning air. None of them heard it. They were too wrapped up in their perfect little morning, their perfect little family of 4. I picked up my suitcase and walked back to my car, my mind racing but somehow completely blank at the same time. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at that BMW, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Did my children know their mother was having an affair? Of course they knew. They were sitting right there, laughing and clapping like it was the most natural thing in the world. The questions kept coming, each one more painful than the last. How long had I been the outsider in my own family? How many times had they done this while I was away on business trips? How many family gatherings had I missed that weren't actually missed at all? I drove to a diner 10 minutes from the house, ordered coffee I couldn't taste, and tried to think. The waitress, a woman about my age with kind eyes, kept refilling my cup and asking if I was okay. I must have looked as broken as I felt. "Rough morning?" she asked during her third refill. I looked up at her and almost laughed. Rough morning. If only it were that simple. You could say that, I managed. She patted my shoulder gently. Whatever it is, honey, it'll work out. Things usually do. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to explain that some things don't work out, that some betrayals can't be fixed with time and good intentions. But instead I just nodded and stared into my coffee. By 10 o'clock I figured they'd all be gone. Sarah would be at her yoga class, the kids would have left for wherever they were staying, and the stranger would be back to his own life. I could go home, pretend I'd just arrived, and figure out what to do next. But when I drove past the house, the BMW was still there. I spent the rest of the day driving around town, seeing places I'd lived near for 15 years but never really noticed. A park where young mothers pushed strollers. A bookstore I'd driven past 1,000 times but never entered. A small cafe where elderly couples shared newspapers and quiet conversations. I realized I didn't know my own neighborhood. I didn't know my own town. I'd been so focused on work, on providing, on being the responsible one, that I'd stopped seeing the world around me. Maybe that's why my family had stopped seeing me too. By evening I was exhausted. Not just tired from the early flight and the stress of discovery, but bone-deep exhausted in a way I'd never felt before. I checked into a hotel 15 minutes from home, a place I'd never noticed despite passing it dozens of times on my way to the airport. The desk clerk, a young man with a friendly smile, asked if I was in town on business. Something like that, I said. In my hotel room, I sat on the bed and stared at my phone. 17 missed calls from Sarah, 23 text messages. The last one, sent just 20 minutes ago, said, "Howard, where are you? I'm worried sick. Please call me." I almost laughed. Worried sick. She was worried that I'd discovered her secret, not worried about my safety. I didn't call back. Instead, I lay on the unfamiliar bed in the unfamiliar room and thought about the man spinning my wife around in our living room. I thought about my children's laughter, their obvious comfort with the situation. I thought about how easily they'd all moved on without me. But mostly I thought about the look on Sarah's face as she danced. Pure joy. Uninhibited happiness. The kind of expression I hadn't seen from her in years, maybe decades. When had she stopped looking at me that way? When had I become the person who made her smile fade instead of appear? The questions followed me into a restless sleep, and I knew that by morning everything would have to change. The next morning I woke up in that sterile hotel room feeling like a stranger to myself. The digital clock glowed 6:15, and for a moment I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back the BMW, the dancing, my children's laughter, the sickening realization that I was completely alone in the world. I checked my phone. 34 missed calls from Sarah now. She'd stopped texting after midnight, probably assuming I was dead in a ditch somewhere. Part of me wished I was. Instead of going home, I drove to my office. It was Friday morning and the building was nearly empty. I'd always liked coming in early before the phone started ringing and the meetings began. Today I needed the silence to think. I sat at my desk and did something I'd never done before in 25 years of business. I opened my personal laptop and began investigating my own wife. Our joint bank account was the first shock. In the past 2 years, Sarah had made regular withdrawals I'd never noticed. $500 here, 1,000 there, always with vague descriptions like household expenses or personal items. I added them up and felt sick. $17,000 gone. Just like that. But it was the credit card statements that really broke my heart. Dinner reservations at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel stays in the city while I was traveling. Shopping trips to stores I couldn't pronounce. Buying clothes I'd never seen her wear. And then, 3 months ago, a charge that made me drop my coffee mug. Marcus Chen Personal Training Services. Monthly package. $2,500. Marcus. So, that was his name. I spent the next hour searching for him online. Marcus Chen, 38 years old, certified personal trainer and life coach. His website was full of photos of him with attractive women in their 40s and 50s, all beaming at the camera like he'd changed their lives. The testimonials made my stomach turn. Marcus helped me rediscover who I really am, wrote someone named Patricia Kay. He showed me that life could be exciting again at 52. Another one. I thought my best years were behind me until I met Marcus. He taught me to love myself again. This one was signed Linda M. I stared at that website for a long time, studying the man who'd been spinning my wife in our living room. He was handsome, I had to admit that, fit in the way that comes from making your body your career. He had kind eyes and an easy smile. The kind of man who probably made women feel heard and understood and special. Everything I apparently wasn't. My secretary knocked on my door around 9:30. "Howard, I thought you were coming back from Denver today." "Change of plans, Margaret. I'm going to work from home for a while. Can you reschedule my appointments for next week?" She looked concerned. Margaret had been with me for 8 years, and she knew my routines better than I did. "Is everything all right? You sound different." "Just tired." I lied. "Long week." After she left, I called in sick for the first time in 5 years and drove home. The BMW was gone, thank God. Sarah's car was in the driveway, which meant she was probably inside, waiting to ambush me with questions and tears and explanations I wasn't ready to hear. But I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked down the street and called a locksmith. "I need you to change all the locks on my house," I told him. "Today, this morning." "Sir, if you're locked out, I can help you get in without—" "I'm not locked out. I want the locks changed, all of them. Front door, back door, garage." There was a pause. "Do you have identification proving you live there? We can't just change locks without—" "It's my house. My name is on the deed. I can provide whatever documentation you need." An hour later, I stood in my own driveway, watching a stranger install new deadbolts on my home while my wife was inside, probably wondering why she couldn't get out. My phone buzzed constantly. Text after text from Sarah, each one more frantic than the last. "Howard, what's going on? Why can't I open the front door? The locks aren't working. Are you doing this? Please talk to me. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Howard, you're scaring me. Just come inside so we can talk." I didn't answer any of them. When the locksmith finished, he handed me the new keys and gave me a look that was part sympathy, part confusion. "You okay, sir? This is a pretty unusual request." "My life has become pretty unusual," I said, and tipped him an extra $50 for not asking more questions. I waited until Sarah's car left the driveway before I went inside. She'd probably gone to Jennifer's house or maybe to Marcus's. Either way, I had time to do what I needed to do. The house felt different somehow, smaller and shabbier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing it clearly for the first time. The furniture we'd bought together looked outdated. The photos on the walls showed a family that had gradually stopped including me. Our recent pictures were mostly Sarah with the kids, or Sarah by herself. I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened Sarah's jewelry box, feeling like a criminal in my own home. Hidden under her earrings, I found them love letters, 3 of them written in handwriting I didn't recognize. The first one was dated 6 months ago. "My beautiful Sarah, last night was everything I've been dreaming about since we met. You deserve so much more than the life you're living. You deserve to feel appreciated, desired, loved completely. I can give you that if you let me. All my love, M." The second one was worse. "I know this is complicated because of the kids, but they see how unhappy you are with Howard. They want you to be happy. We all do. You've spent 23 years taking care of everyone else. Let me take care of you now. Forever yours, M." The third one, dated just 2 weeks ago, was the one that destroyed me. "Sarah, I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending. I know you are too. The kids already love me, and I love them like they're my own. We could be a real family, the kind Howard never gave you. You just have to be brave enough to take the leap. I'll be here to catch you. Always, Marcus. The kids already love me. I love them like they're my own." I sat on the bed I'd shared with Sarah for over 2 decades and felt something break inside me that I knew would never heal. It wasn't just that my wife was having an affair, it was that my children had chosen him over me. They'd looked at my marriage and decided Marcus was the better option. They'd watched their mother fall in love with another man and cheered her on. When had I lost them? When had I become the outsider in my own family? I remembered David's graduation from college 2 years ago. I'd been proud, taking pictures, trying to coordinate a family dinner afterward. But David had seemed distant, and Sarah had begged off, saying she had a headache. Jennifer had made an excuse too, something about her husband needing her home early. I thought, they were just busy. Now I realized they probably had plans with Marcus. I went downstairs and opened Sarah's laptop. Her password was still the same one she'd used for years, our anniversary date. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her email was full of messages from Marcus going back 2 years. 2 years. This wasn't a fling or a midlife crisis. This was a relationship. A real, committed, long-term relationship. And everyone knew about it except me. The emails painted a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. Sarah, frustrated with my long work hours and business trips. Sarah, feeling unappreciated and taken for granted. Sarah, meeting Marcus at the gym and finding someone who listened to her, who made her laugh, who made her feel young and beautiful and alive. The most recent email chain was between Sarah and Jennifer, dated 3 days ago. Jennifer: Mom, when are you going to tell Dad? This is getting ridiculous. Marcus practically lives there when Dad's traveling. Sarah: I know, honey. I just need to find the right time. Your father has been so stressed about the Peterson account. Jennifer: You've been saying that for 6 months. Just tell him. He'll probably be relieved, honestly. You two haven't been happy in years. Sarah: Do you really think so? Jennifer: Mom, I love Dad, but let's be honest. When was the last time you saw him smile? Really smile? Marcus makes you happy in a way Dad never did. David and I see it. Even Dad would see it if he paid attention to anything besides work. I closed the laptop and sat in my living room, the same living room where I'd watched my wife dance with another man just yesterday, feeling like I was reading about strangers. Was that really how my children saw me? As a workaholic who didn't pay attention, who hadn't made their mother happy in years? Maybe they were right. Maybe I had been absent, even when I was physically present. Maybe I'd been so focused on providing for them that I'd forgotten to actually live with them. But that didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. If anything, it made it worse. My phone rang. Sarah's picture flashed on the screen, our wedding photo from 23 years ago, when we were both young and hopeful and madly in love. I let it go to voicemail. By Saturday morning, I'd made my decision. No more hiding, no more pretending everything was normal. If my family wanted to play games, I'd play too. But I'd play to win. I drove to the bank first thing in the morning before Sarah could think to beat me there. 23 years of marriage meant 23 years of joint accounts, shared credit cards, and financial decisions made together. Or so I'd thought. Good morning, Mr. Harrison. The branch manager, Patricia Williams, greeted me with her usual professional smile. What can I help you with today? I need to understand all the accounts my wife and I have together, and I need to know about any accounts she might have opened. Independently? Patricia's smile faltered slightly. After 15 years of banking with them, she probably knew us well enough to sense when something was wrong. Is everything all right, Howard? This seems like an unusual request. Let's just say I need to get my financial house in order. It took 2 hours to go through everything. What I discovered made my blood run cold. 3 months ago, Sarah had opened a separate savings account and had been steadily transferring money into it. Not huge amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts or raise immediate suspicions. 500 here, 700 there. Always keeping it under 1,000 to avoid any automatic notifications to me as the joint account holder. The total was staggering. $38,000, nearly $40,000 that she'd quietly moved out of our joint savings without my knowledge. But that wasn't the worst part. Mrs. Harrison also applied for a credit card in her name only 6 weeks ago. Patricia explained, her voice carefully neutral. She listed her employment status as consultant and used your home address, but the card statements go to a P.O. box. My hands started shaking. How much credit did she get approved for? $25,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Sarah hadn't worked outside the home in 15 years. She'd quit her job as a teacher when David started high school, saying she wanted to focus on being a mother and supporting my career. We'd agreed it made sense I was earning enough to support us comfortably, and she'd been happier not dealing with the stress of her job, except now she was apparently running her own consulting business, a business I'd never heard of. Can you print me statements for everything? I asked. Joint accounts, her individual account, and, if possible, information about that credit card. Patricia hesitated. Howard, I can give you everything for the joint accounts, but for her individual accounts, we're married. Community property state. I understand, but there are privacy concerns. Let me see what I can do. An hour later, I walked out of the bank with a folder full of papers that painted a picture I didn't want to see. Sarah hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been planning her exit strategy. The consulting business was real, she'd been doing freelance bookkeeping for small businesses, probably something Marcus had helped her set up. The credit card had been used for things like apartment deposits in the city, furniture purchases, and a payment to something called Drake & Associates Legal Services. A lawyer. She'd hired a divorce lawyer. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and called the number for Drake & Associates. "Good morning, Drake & Associates. This is Michelle speaking." "Yes, I'd like to speak with someone about a consultation. My name is Howard Harrison." There was a pause. "Mr. Harrison, let me check. Yes, Mr. Drake has been expecting to hear from you. Can you hold for just a moment?" Expecting to hear from me. My wife's divorce attorney had been expecting my call. "Mr. Harrison." A man's voice came on the line, confident and smooth. "This is Robert Drake. I think we need to talk." "I think we do too." We agreed to meet Monday morning. I spent the rest of Saturday driving around town, trying to process everything I'd learned. My wife had been planning to divorce me for months. She'd been quietly moving money, establishing credit in her own name and consulting with lawyers. All while I'd been working 60-hour weeks to provide for our family, believing we were building a future together. The betrayal was so complete, so thoroughly planned that I almost had to admire the execution. Almost. Sunday was the hardest day. I stayed in the hotel, ordering room service and trying to figure out what came next. My phone had stopped ringing. Sarah had apparently given up trying to reach me directly. But around noon, Jennifer called. "Dad, where the hell are you?" My daughter's voice was sharp, angry in a way that reminded me of her mother. "I'm taking some time to think," I said. "Think about what?" "Mom is losing her mind. She can't get into the house, she can't reach you, and she doesn't know if you're dead or alive. This is insane, even for you. Even for me. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong." "Jennifer, how long have you known about Marcus?" Silence. Long, guilty silence. "Dad, it's not what you think." "How long, Jennifer?" "About a year," she said finally, her voice smaller now. "But Dad, you have to understand. I don't have to understand anything. You're my daughter. She's your mother. We're supposed to be a family." "We are a family." "But families change, Dad. People grow apart. Mom and you haven't been happy in years." I closed my eyes, feeling every one of my 59 years settling into my bones. "So you decided Marcus was the solution?" "We decided Mom deserved to be happy. She's been miserable, Dad, really miserable. You work all the time, you barely talk to her, and when you do, it's about bills or schedules or what needs to be fixed around the house. When was the last time you took her on a date? When was the last time you told her she was beautiful?" Each question was like a knife twist, because she was right, and we both knew it. "That doesn't justify what she did, what all of you did. We didn't want to hurt you, Dad. We wanted her to be happy. And Marcus makes her happy. What about me, Jennifer? What about what makes me happy?" Another long pause. "Dad, when was the last time you seemed happy? Really, truly happy?" I couldn't answer that question. I wasn't sure I even remembered what happiness felt like. "Just come home," Jennifer said, her voice pleading now. "Mom wants to explain everything. She never meant for it to go this far. She was going to tell you." "When? When was she going to tell me?" "After she'd moved all our money. After she'd hired a divorce lawyer. After she'd completely destroyed our marriage." "Dad, I have to go." I hung up and stared at the hotel room wall for a long time. The truth was, Jennifer was right about some things. I hadn't been happy. I'd been going through the motions for years, maybe decades. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I convinced myself that providing for my family was the same as loving them. I thought that paying the bills and maintaining the house and saving for retirement was what a good husband and father did. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a person and started being just a function. The provider. The responsible one. The man who took care of everything so everyone else could be happy. And they'd been happy. Just not with me. Monday morning arrived grey and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I put on my best suit, the navy one Sarah had bought me for our 20th anniversary, and drove to meet the man who was going to help my wife divorce me. Robert Drake's office was in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where serious money gets made and serious decisions get decided. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with silver at his temples and the kind of confident handshake that cost $500 an hour. "Mr. Harrison, thank you for coming in. I know this must be difficult." "Let's just get to it," I said. "What exactly has my wife told you?" He opened a thick file folder. "Mrs. Harrison came to see me 8 weeks ago. She wanted to understand her options regarding dissolution of marriage." Dissolution. That's a nice word for it. "She was very clear that she hoped to avoid contentious proceedings. She said, 'You're a reasonable man who wants what's best for everyone involved.'" I almost laughed. "Did she also mention that she's been having an affair for 2 years?" Drake's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. "Mrs. Harrison mentioned that the marriage has been struggling for some time and that both parties have grown apart. That's one way to put it." He leaned forward, his hands folded on the desk. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to be straight with you. Your wife has asked me to prepare divorce papers that would give you a very fair settlement. She wants to keep the house, but she's willing to split all other assets 50-50. She's not seeking alimony and she's not trying to hide any marital property, except for the $38,000 she'd already hidden. And the credit card I wasn't supposed to know about. How generous of her. She also wanted me to tell you that she hopes this can be handled quietly, without involving the children more than necessary. She knows this is painful for everyone." I stood up, straightening my tie. "Mr. Drake, I want you to give my wife a message." "Of course." "Tell her I said no." "No to what, specifically?" "No to all of it. No to the quiet divorce. No to the fair settlement. No to keeping this away from the children. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "And Mr. Drake, you might want to ask my wife about the $38,000 she's been hiding in her private savings account, just to make sure we're all being completely honest about marital property." The look on his face was worth every penny this was going to cost me. I had my own lawyer to find. I spent Monday afternoon in the office of Eleanor Rodriguez, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the city. She came recommended by my business attorney with the warning that she was expensive, ruthless, and exactly what I needed. "Howard," she said, after I'd explained the situation, "your wife has been planning this for a while. The separate accounts, the credit card, the lawyer consultations, this isn't impulsive behavior. This is strategy." "That's what I figured. But there's something else you need to know. I did some research after you called this morning." She opened a laptop and turned it toward me. "Your wife's boyfriend isn't just a personal trainer." The screen showed a series of news articles dating back 5 years. The headlines made my stomach drop. "Local woman loses life savings to fitness scam." "Personal trainer accused of elder financial abuse." "Gym employee under investigation for targeting wealthy clients." All the articles featured the same photo. Marcus Chen, looking exactly as he had when I'd seen him spinning my wife around our living room. "This man has a pattern," Eleanor explained, scrolling through the articles. "He targets married women with money, usually women who are going through difficult periods in their marriages. He becomes their personal trainer, then their confidant, then their lover, and eventually he convinces them to leave their husbands and give him access to their finances." I felt sick. "How many women?" "That we know of, 4 over the past 6 years, and those are just the ones who pressed charges." She clicked to another article, this one from 2 years ago. "Personal trainer sentenced to probation in financial exploitation case." "He was convicted?" I asked. "Minimal sentence. Probation, restitution, community service. The judge was lenient because his last victim refused to testify against him. She said she'd given him the money willingly." Jesus. "Howard, there's more." Eleanor's voice was gentle, but her words hit like sledgehammers. "I have a contact at the police department. Marcus Chen is currently under investigation again, this time for identity theft and credit card fraud. They think he's been using stolen personal information to open credit accounts." The room started spinning. My wife's credit card. When did she apply for it? 6 weeks ago. And who helped her with the application? I didn't need to answer. We both knew. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. Howard, I think your wife is being conned. And I think your children are caught in the middle of something much bigger than a simple affair. She was right. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they made was uglier than I'd imagined. Marcus wasn't just stealing my wife, he was stealing her identity, her money, and possibly setting her up for criminal charges. What do I do? First, we protect your assets immediately. Then we gather evidence, and then we decide whether to save your wife or let her face the consequences of her choices. I spent the next 3 days playing detective. Eleanor had given me the name of a private investigator, but I decided to do some digging myself first. If my wife was in danger, I needed to know how deep the rabbit hole went. I started by driving past Marcus's apartment complex. The address was on his personal trainer certification, which I'd found through the state licensing board. It was a luxury building downtown, the kind of place that rented for $4,000 a month. For a personal trainer, that seemed ambitious, unless he had other sources of income. I parked across the street and waited. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Marcus emerged from the building. But he wasn't alone. He was with a woman I'd never seen before, blonde, maybe 55, well-dressed. They were holding hands and she was laughing at something he'd said. I followed them to an expensive restaurant in the Arts District. Through the window I watched them have lunch. The woman paid for the meal with a credit card, then handed Marcus an envelope. He kissed her goodbye and walked to a silver Porsche I hadn't seen before. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Howard, please, we need to talk. I'm scared. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my wife. She thought she'd found love, but she'd actually found a predator. I called Elena from my car. I need you to contact the police, I said. I think Sarah is about to become victim number 5. That evening I did something I hadn't done in days. I went home. Sarah's car was in the driveway, along with Jennifer's SUV and David's rental car. My children had flown in to mediate, apparently. The whole family was waiting for me. I used my new key and walked into my own house like I was entering enemy territory. They were all sitting in the living room, Sarah on the couch, tears streaming down her face, Jennifer and David flanking her like bodyguards. The scene was so perfectly staged it looked like an intervention. Dad? David stood up first. We need to talk. Yes, we do. I remained standing, keeping my distance. But first I have some questions. Howard, please, Sarah said, her voice broken. I know you're angry, but how long have you been giving Marcus money? The question stopped her mid-sentence. She glanced at Jennifer, then back at me. What do you mean? I mean the $38,000 you've hidden in your private savings account. I mean the credit card he helped you get. I mean the checks you've been writing to his business account. David stepped forward. Dad, you're acting paranoid. Am I? Did you know Marcus has been convicted of financial fraud? Did you know he's currently under investigation for identity theft? The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible, Jennifer said finally. Marcus is a good person. He cares about Mom. Marcus is a con artist who targets vulnerable married women. You're not his first victim, Sarah. You're just his latest. Sarah's face went white. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed them the news articles Eleanor had found. I watched their expressions change from denial to confusion to horror as they read the headlines. This has to be a mistake, Sarah whispered. Marcus loves me. He wants to marry me. He wants to marry your bank account. David grabbed my phone, scrolling through the articles. Dad, these are from years ago. People change. And besides, Mom says Marcus never asked her for money. He didn't ask. He convinced her to give it to him willingly, just like he convinced her to get a credit card he could use. I don't understand, Jennifer said, looking between Sarah and me. Mom, is this true? About the money? Sarah was crying harder now, her hands shaking. He said we needed to start building our life together. He said the money was for our future, for an apartment where we could live together after the divorce. What apartment? I asked, though I was pretty sure I knew the answer. He found us a place downtown, a beautiful loft. He said he put down the deposit with his savings, but I needed to help with the first few months of rent while he transitioned his business. His business that doesn't exist. It does exist. He has clients. He trains women all over the city. Women he's stealing from. The fight seemed to go out of Sarah all at once. She collapsed back onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. Oh God! Oh God, what have I done? Jennifer sat down beside her mother, putting an arm around her shoulders. Mom, it's okay. If this is true, then you're a victim too. No, Sarah said, her voice muffled by her hands. I'm not a victim. I chose this. I chose him over my husband. I chose to lie and hide money and plan a divorce. I chose to betray my family. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than anger when I looked at my wife. I felt pity. Sarah, I said quietly, sitting down across from her, how much money have you given him in total? She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. I don't know. Maybe $50,000, maybe more. David swore under his breath. And the credit card? He's been using it for business expenses. The balance is around $18,000. Nearly $70,000. Gone. Dad, Jennifer said, her voice small. What do we do now? I looked around the room at my broken family. My wife who'd betrayed me but was now facing the consequences of her own poor judgment. My children who'd supported their mother's affair but were now realizing they'd helped her walk into a trap. The smart thing would be to walk away. Let Sarah deal with the mess she'd created. Let the police handle Marcus when they caught up with him. File for divorce and move on with whatever was left of my life. But looking at Sarah, broken and frightened and finally understanding what she'd lost, I realized something. I didn't want her to suffer any more than she already had. We're going to stop him, I said. All of us. Together. The next morning we sat around my kitchen table like generals planning a war. Sarah looked exhausted, her eyes puffy from crying. But there was something different about her now. The dreamy, infatuated look she'd worn for months was gone, replaced by grim determination. I feel so stupid, she said for the 10th time since we'd started talking. Mom, you're not stupid, David said, though his voice lacked conviction. You just trusted the wrong person. Jennifer was less charitable. How could you not see it, Mom? How could you give a man you'd known for 2 years $70,000 without questioning anything? Because I thought he loved me, Sarah snapped back, some of her old fire returning. Because I was lonely and unhappy, and he made me feel alive again. Because your father worked 80 hours a week and barely spoke to me unless it was about bills or schedules. She turned to me, her eyes blazing. I'm not making excuses, Howard. What I did was wrong, but let's not pretend our marriage was perfect before Marcus came along. She was right, and we all knew it, but right now we had bigger problems than our failed marriage. The question is, I said, what do we do about Marcus? Eleanor Rodriguez arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of someone who'd seen every kind of family disaster imaginable. First things first, she said, settling into a chair at our dining room table. Sarah, you need to call your credit card company immediately and report the card as stolen. But Marcus didn't steal it. I gave it to him. He obtained it through false pretenses. That makes it fraud. Call them now before he runs up any more charges. While Sarah made the call, Eleanor spread papers across the table. I've been in contact with Detective Morrison at the Financial Crimes Unit. They're very interested in talking to you, Sarah. You're the first victim who's come forward while the relationship was still active. What does that mean? Jennifer asked. It means we have a chance to catch him in the act, if Sarah is willing to cooperate. Sarah returned from making her phone call, her face pale. The credit card company said someone used the card this morning at a jewelry store downtown. $8,000. An engagement ring. He was buying an engagement ring for his next victim while still stringing my wife along. That son of a bitch, David muttered. Eleanor leaned forward. Sarah, Detective Morrison wants to set up a controlled meeting with Marcus. You'll wear a wire and they'll record him talking about the money, the future plans, all of it. I can't, Sarah said immediately. What if he finds out? What if he gets violent? He won't know. These devices are virtually undetectable, and you'll have backup watching the entire time. I studied my wife's face. Even after everything, she was still protecting him. Sarah, I said quietly, how many other women do you want him to destroy? That got through to her. She nodded slowly. What do I have to do? The plan was simple, which Eleanor said was usually the most effective approach. Sarah would call Marcus and tell him she was ready to leave me permanently. She'd say she wanted to discuss their future together and could meet him at their usual place, a coffee shop in the Arts District where they'd had many of their secret rendezvous. He'll be suspicious, Sarah warned as Detective Morrison fitted her with a wire in our living room. He's been trying to reach me for days. When I finally call, he's going to wonder where I've been. Tell him your husband came home unexpectedly and you've been trying to keep him from getting suspicious, Morrison suggested. Tell him you're scared and need to see him. Because that's exactly what I am, Sarah said, and I realized she wasn't talking about being scared of me. We drove separately to the coffee shop. Detective Morrison and his partner were already there, posing as a couple reading newspapers. Eleanor and I sat in my car half a block away, listening to the conversation through Morrison's radio. Marcus arrived 10 minutes late, and I could hear the concern in his voice immediately. Sarah, baby, what's wrong? You look terrible. I've been so worried, Sarah said, her voice perfectly pitched between anxiety and relief. Howard came home early from his trip, and I think he suspects something. Did he say anything? Not directly, but he's been asking questions about money, about where I've been spending time. Marcus, I'm scared he's going to find out about us. There was a pause. In the background, I could hear the ambient noise of the coffee shop, other conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups. We need to be more careful, Marcus said finally. Maybe we should cool things down for a while. My hands clenched into fists. Even now, when Sarah was supposedly ready to leave me for him, he was hedging his bets. Cool things down. Sarah's voice rose slightly. Marcus, you said you love me. You said we were going to be together. We are, baby, we are. I just think we need to be smart about this. I've already been smart about this. I've been moving money like you suggested. I got the credit card. I even talked to a divorce lawyer. You did? Genuine surprise in his voice. When? 2 weeks ago. I told him I wanted out of my marriage. Sarah, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Eleanor and I exchanged glances. He was proud of her for taking steps that would give him access to half her marital assets. But Marcus, I need to know this is real. I need to know you're serious about our future together. Of course I'm serious. Why would you even ask that? Because you've been distant lately, and yesterday I tried to use the credit card and the company said someone else had been using it. Silence. Long, guilty silence. Marcus, did you hear me? Yeah, Sarah, I can explain that. Explain what? That you spent $8,000 this morning at a jewelry store? How did you… He caught himself. Sarah, that was for you. I was buying you something special. An $8,000 surprise? An engagement ring. His voice was smooth again, confident. I was going to wait for the right moment, but yes, I bought you an engagement ring because I want to spend the rest of my life with you. In the car, Eleanor shook her head. He's good. I'll give him that. But Sarah wasn't buying it anymore. Marcus, show me the ring. What? If you bought me an engagement ring this morning, show it to me. Another pause. I don't have it with me. It's being sized. Being sized? How do you know my ring size? I estimated. Marcus, I think you're lying to me. Sarah, why would I lie to you? After everything we've been through, after all the plans we've made. What plans? You keep talking about our future, but you never give me specifics. Where are we going to live? What are we going to do for money? How are we going to support ourselves? I thought we talked about this, the apartment downtown. The apartment you put a deposit on with my money. Our money. Sarah, when we're married, there won't be any your money and my money. It'll all be ours. Like it is now? What do you mean? I mean the $50,000 I've given you. The credit card I got that you've been using. The consulting business you helped me set up that doesn't seem to have any actual clients. I could hear the panic creeping into Marcus's voice. Sarah, you're acting paranoid. This isn't like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. Baby, listen to me. I love you. I know this is scary, leaving your husband, starting over. But we can do this together. I'm here for you. Are you? Because I called you 6 times yesterday and you never called back. I was with a client. You know how demanding my work schedule is. What client? Sarah, why are you interrogating me like this? What's gotten into you? I want to know who you were with yesterday when you couldn't return my calls. A client. A woman who's going through a difficult time in her marriage. Not that it's any of your business. Eleanor and I both sat up straighter. He just admitted to being with another married woman. What's her name? Sarah asked. I can't tell you that. Client confidentiality. Client confidentiality for a personal trainer? For a life coach. Sarah, you're being ridiculous. Am I? Marcus, how many other women like me do you have? What are you talking about? How many other lonely, unhappy wives are you helping through their difficult marriages? Sarah, I think you need to calm down. How many, Marcus? You're being paranoid and jealous, and frankly, it's not attractive. That was the wrong thing to say. Even through the radio, I could hear the ice in Sarah's voice when she responded. Not attractive. Marcus, I've given you $70,000. I've destroyed my marriage for you. I've alienated my children and risked my future. And you think I'm being unattractive. Sarah, I want my money back. What? You heard me. I want my money back. All of it. Right now. Sarah, that's not how this works. The money was for our future together. What future? You can't even show me an engagement ring you supposedly bought this morning. The ring is real, Sarah. I love you. Everything I've told you is true. Prove it. How? Marry me. Right now. Today. The silence stretched so long that Eleanor and I both thought we'd lost the connection. Finally Marcus spoke, and his voice was different now. Colder. More calculated. Sarah, I think you're having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you should go home to your husband and work through whatever this is. Maybe you should go to hell. I heard the sound of a chair scraping, then Sarah's voice again, louder now, addressing the entire coffee shop. Ladies, if there are any middle-aged married women in here, be careful of this man. His name is Marcus Chen, and he preys on lonely wives. He'll make you feel special and loved, and then he'll steal your money and disappear. Sarah, sit down. You're making a scene. I'm warning people about you, just like I should have been warned. We could hear him leaving, his footsteps quick and angry. A moment later, Detective Morrison's voice came through the radio. We got it all. Every word. That was perfect, Sarah. But I wasn't thinking about the recording or the evidence or the criminal case they were going to build. I was thinking about my wife, who'd just shown more strength and courage than I'd seen from her in 20 years of marriage. Maybe there was hope for us after all. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our house making coffee for 2, watching Sarah tend to the garden through the window. She'd started gardening again after Marcus was arrested, something she hadn't done in years. She said she needed to put her hands in the dirt to grow something real after months of living in lies. Marcus Chen was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for identity theft, wire fraud, and financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. The prosecutor said it was one of the most clear-cut cases she'd ever seen, thanks to Sarah's testimony and the recorded conversation. He'd been running the same con for almost a decade, targeting women like Sarah, women who felt invisible in their own marriages. Sarah lost most of the money she'd given him, but we recovered about $20,000 from accounts the FBI froze before he could move the funds offshore. More importantly, she'd helped put away a man who destroyed at least 6 other families that we knew of. The divorce papers that Robert Drake had prepared never got filed. Neither did the countersuit I'd asked Eleanor to draft. Instead, we went to couples therapy. Dr. Patricia Hawkins was a stern woman in her 60s who didn't believe in pulling punches. Our first session had been brutal. Howard, she'd said, you've spent 23 years being a provider instead of a husband. You're angry about Sarah's betrayal, but you checked out of this marriage years ago. Then she'd turn to Sarah. And you, instead of fighting for your marriage or leaving it honestly, you chose to have an affair and steal money. You both failed each other spectacularly. It wasn't the validation either of us had been looking for, but it was what we needed to hear. The therapy sessions were harder than anything I'd ever done in business. We talked about things we'd buried for years, my father's emotional absence and how I'd repeated the pattern. Sarah's fear of confrontation that made her sneak around instead of demanding what she needed from our marriage. We talked about how we'd both used the children as intermediaries instead of talking directly to each other. I stopped seeing you as a person, I admitted during one particularly difficult session. You became this role wife, mother, household manager. I forgot you were a woman with her own dreams and needs. Sarah cried during that session, but they weren't the angry tears I'd grown accustomed to. They were tears of relief. I stopped believing I deserved to be happy, she said. I thought my job was to make everyone else's life work, and I could just survive on whatever scraps of attention and affection were left over. Dr. Hawkins made us do exercises that felt ridiculous at first. We had to schedule weekly dates and talk about things other than schedules and logistics. We had to list 3 things we appreciated about each other every day. We had to touch each other non-sexually for at least 5 minutes each day, holding hands, hugging, just being physically present with each other. It felt forced and artificial for months, but slowly something shifted. I started remembering why I'd fallen in love with Sarah in the first place. She was funny when she wasn't worried about managing everyone else's emotions. She was smart about things that had nothing to do with household efficiency. She had opinions about books and movies and politics that she'd stopped sharing because I'd stopped listening. Sarah started seeing me as someone other than a paycheck with legs. She told me later that she'd forgotten I had interests beyond work, that I actually had thoughts about the world that weren't related to quarterly reports or client meetings. The children struggled with our reconciliation more than either of us expected. I don't understand, Jennifer said during one family dinner. Mom, he ignored you for years. Dad, she cheated on you and stole money. Why are you trying to make this work? Because we're tired of being miserable, Sarah answered. And because we finally figured out that we were making each other miserable out of habit, not because we didn't love each other. David was more blunt. You two are 59 and 56 years old. Why not just get divorced and find people who actually make you happy? Because, I said, we realized we could make each other happy if we actually tried. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. We had bad days, days when the old patterns reasserted themselves and we fell back into being strangers sharing a house. But we had more good days than bad, and the good days kept getting better. Sarah went back to teaching, something she'd missed more than she'd admitted. She got a job at a local community college, teaching basic accounting to working adults. She came home energized by her students and her work in a way I hadn't seen in years. I cut back on travel and turned down projects that would keep me away from home more than 2 days a week. My business partner thought I was having a midlife crisis, but I was finally having a life. We started doing things together again. Small things, cooking dinner on Sunday afternoons, taking walks in the evening, going to movies we both wanted to see. We talked about books we'd read and places we wanted to visit. We rediscovered that we actually enjoyed each other's company when we weren't exhausted and resentful. The physical intimacy came back slowly. For months after the Marcus revelation, we slept in the same bed, but barely touched each other. Sarah was ashamed of her betrayal, and I was still hurt and angry. But Dr. Hawkins kept pushing us to be physically present with each other, even when it was uncomfortable. Intimacy isn't just about sex, she said. It's about being willing to be vulnerable with each other. You can't rebuild emotional intimacy while maintaining physical distance. The first time we made love after everything that had happened, we both cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. We thought we'd lost each other forever, and somehow we'd found our way back. Now 6 months later, I looked at my wife kneeling in the dirt, planting tomatoes for our summer garden, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not the settled resignation I'd mistaken for happiness for so many years, but actual peace. She looked up and caught me watching her, soil streaked across her cheek and her graying hair escaping from its ponytail. What? She asked, smiling. Nothing, just you look happy. I am happy. Even after everything? Even after all the mess and the therapy and the work? She sat back on her heels, considering the question seriously. Especially after all of that. I never thought I could be happy again, Howard. I thought I was too old, too set in my ways, too damaged, but we figured it out. We're still figuring it out. That's what makes it interesting. She stood up, brushing dirt off her knees, and walked over to where I was standing by the kitchen window. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come home early that day? She asked. I considered it. I think you would have left me eventually. Marcus would have taken whatever money he could get and disappeared. And we both would have ended up alone and bitter. Do you think we would have been happier? No, I said without hesitation. We would have been miserable in different ways. At least now we're working towards something. She leaned against me and I put my arms around her, still marveling at how natural it felt to hold my own wife after years of careful distance. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For all of it. For the lying and the money and Marcus, for giving up on us without even trying to fix things first. I'm sorry too, for disappearing into work, for making you feel like you didn't matter, for taking 23 years to learn how to be a husband instead of just a provider. We'd had this conversation before, in therapy and at home, but somehow it never got old. Each apology felt like another layer of resentment being peeled away. Howard. Yeah? I love you. Not the you I was trying to change, and not the you I thought you should be. I love the you that you actually are. Even the workaholic part. Even that. As long as you remember to come home. I kissed the top of her head, tasting salt and sunshine and the faint scent of the lavender soap she'd started using again. I'm home, I said. Finally. That afternoon we sat on our back porch drinking iced tea and planning our garden. Sarah wanted to try growing herbs this year, and I suggested we build raised beds to make the gardening easier on our aging backs. We talked about taking a vacation together, our first real vacation in over a decade. Sarah wanted to go somewhere with beaches and warm weather. I wanted to go somewhere we could walk and explore and talk without the distractions of home. We were different people than we'd been 6 months ago. Older, maybe wiser. Certainly more honest about who we were and what we needed from each other. Our children were still adjusting to having parents who actually liked each other, and sometimes I caught them looking at us with something between confusion and relief. Jennifer had admitted that watching us work through our problems had inspired her to try harder in her own marriage instead of just assuming that marital happiness was something that happened to other people. David had started calling more often, not because he felt obligated, but because he genuinely enjoyed talking to us. Having parents who were working on their own relationship had somehow freed him to have a relationship with us that wasn't based on managing family dysfunction. As the sun set behind our garden, Sarah reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were still stained with soil, and her wedding ring caught the last light of the day. Thank you, she said. For what? For not giving up on us. For fighting for us, even when I'd stopped fighting. I squeezed her hand. Thank you for coming back to me. For choosing us over him. Choosing us over being miserable, she corrected. That was the real choice. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell around us. Two people who'd almost lost everything and somehow found their way back to each other. It wasn't the marriage we'd started with 23 years ago, but it was better. It was real in a way our young love had never been, built on honesty and choice rather than expectations and assumptions. I thought about Marcus sometimes, sitting in his federal prison cell, probably planning his next con for when he got out. He'd seen Sarah as a mark, a lonely woman ripe for exploitation. He'd never understood that what she really wanted wasn't romance or excitement or escape from her life. She'd wanted to matter, to be seen and valued and chosen every day by someone who knew who she really was. It had just taken us 23 years to figure out how to do that for each other. But we'd figured it out. And that, I thought as Sarah leaned her head against my shoulder, was worth everything we'd been through to get here.